Hello, good evening, and welcome to your AEW Dynamite recap show edition of the Wrestling Inc. podcast. I am your host, the content machine, Liam Crowley, and I'm joined by two familiar faces today. First, to my right, it's a Wrestling Inc. podcast regular, NYC's Demon Diva, Isa. Isa, long time no see.
It's just been since Sunday, my friend. This is my fourth night in a row on Wrestling Inc. tonight. The viewers gotta be like sick of me, but I love you guys.
Well, thankfully we have a stacked edition of AEW Dynamite to keep
So
those
much fun.
turning, and joining us alongside Isa and myself. To my left, former WWE referee and author of the 3 Count, the delightful Jimmy Korderas. Jimmy, great to be back on the mics with you. It's been a couple months.
Yeah, it's been a little while, and wow, delightful. I may have someone who might disagree with you, but I appreciate you saying so. And yes, you're right. It was what an edition of Dynamite coming out of the paper.
So much fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can't agree more, guys. This is going to be a very fun show to sink our teeth into. But before we get into AEW Dynamite recap and review, and don't worry, we're going to spend a lot of time on that MJF promo, we do have one little bit of news that I did want to spotlight on today's podcast, and that being Bray Wyatt, Mr. Wyndham Rotunda himself, back on social media, dropping some cryptic tweets. We don't exactly know what's happening with him, what his future holds, but he did drop 3 noteworthy blurbs that I wanted to read here. First, we have everything good that's ever happened to me. First came a period of horrible suffering. I never ask why. I just wait for the rough part to end. I was chosen for whatever reason, and I've got shit to do. It doesn't hurt anymore. It burns. I'm ready now. He followed that up with, I'm tired of watching, tired of hearing irrelevant clowns speculate how I'll be perceived, tired of hearing about my greed, my desire questioned. Wherever and whenever I decide to return, I'll remind everyone why they know my name again and again. Believe in me. And he finalized that with one simple tweet: patience. It's almost time. Isa, I'll go to you first for this one. What does any of this jargon mean? Are we actually getting close to Bray Wyatt's return to pro wrestling?
I hope so. I want to see Bray Wyatt come back in whatever capacity, whether it is in a horror movie like it was discussed, whether it is in pro wrestling. I'm a big Bray Wyatt fan. I think he's a game changer, and I don't use that term a lot, but I really do think Bray Wyatt is that person. Regardless of where he shows up, there is a fan base behind him that are just desperately waiting to see him. So I love the fact that with just a couple of tweets, he has everybody talking about him, because it goes to show you how relevant he still is. And when I don't care where he shows up, that is someone that I'm following no matter where he goes. So I'm excited for it.
And I love that aspect of him too, because most people try to capitalize on that. If it's 30 days or 90 days, as soon as those, durations of time are expired, they go to the next company. They want to make sure their star is as bright as ever. Bray Wyatt has been outside of a squared circle for almost a calendar year, and he still has our attention like that. Jimmy Korderas, when you saw these tweets, what was your initial reaction? Is Bray Wyatt going back to WWE? Is he going to another company? Where do you see his pro wrestling future lying?
It almost feels like he is hinting at WWE, but whether it's WWE or AEW, in my opinion, there are ready-made rivalries for him wherever he goes, because at this point right now, whatever company he decides to go to, the fans are going to just be right behind him. They're going to love the return. And if it's AEW, he's got a rivalry he could set up with House of Black that I think would be very, very exciting. But if you look now in WWE, Edge, in his little posse there, and you look, something else that has me curious coming off of Monday night too. We saw Alexa Bliss Monday night. She's still carrying that little doll with her.
Yeah.
Yes, she has been getting help. But she is still carrying the doll with her. So wherever it goes, Bray Wyatt's going to make an impact. And I think fans are ready, eager, and waiting for him to return wherever it happens to be. And knowing Bray, he's going to make it work wherever it is.
I completely agree. Wherever he ends up, I think he will adapt very well to, and I think he'll kind of change the culture as well, no matter whether it's a return to WWE, a debut with AEW, or maybe something else entirely that's not even on our radars. But you mentioned ready, eager, and waiting. I think the people are ready, eager, and waiting for us to dive into AEW Dynamite. And we kick this show off with our new AEW champion, Mr. CM Punk, making his way to the ring with that belt, the gold around his waist. It just feels right again. I started watching pro wrestling in 2011, and I remember CM Punk with the old spinner title. Punk plus gold just equals money for my eyes. Himself and FTR ended up defeating Max Caster and the Gun Club. Max Caster obviously not having his tag partner, Anthony Bowens. He's still on the shelf with an injury, but he still comes down in the wheelchair and supports from ringside. A big GTS and big rig combination to get that final 1, 2, 3. Isa, I want to go to you first for this one. What did you think of Punk's first match as AEW champion?
I mean, I love that they put him in a 6-man match. I think, you know, it was a rough night for everybody on Sunday. So it was good to see him, especially with FTR. We know that after Double or Nothing went off the air, that's who he decided to celebrate in the ring. And this is a stable that I can get behind any day of the week. Like, take my money. I'm with you. Seeing CM Punk with the title, it feels like I'm living in a weird multiverse. Like, even when his music hits, it still doesn't feel real to me. And that also goes to seeing Cody wrestle in WWE. I still, like, I watch it every week and it still doesn't, like, click with my brain that I'm really watching this. But I do think that it's the right decision to put the title on CM Punk. And I know we'll spend a lot of time talking about it, but I know exactly we should be taking that title off of him. So I'll leave it at that.
I like it. I like it. Jimmy Korderas, after the bell rang, Punk and Dax Harwood got on the mics. Punk mentioning that he still has to get better, but that's what the title is all about. And Dax shouting out his wife and daughter in the crowd, mentioning that he is not okay with being attacked, referencing obviously the United Empire coming after him and his tag partner last week. And then we got the big reveal. Punk saying he has someone on the other side of the forbidden door waiting for him, none other than the ace of New Japan, Hiroshi Tanahashi. How do you feel about the likely main event of Forbidden Door being CM Punk versus Hiroshi Tanahashi?
I like it from a diehard hardcore wrestling fan point of view, because this is a dream matchup. You know, a New Japan Pro Wrestler, Tanahashi versus CM Punk, the newly crowned AEW champion, which I agree. I think it was the right decision for him to become the champion. It's not any disrespect to Hangman Adam Page. This is more that I don't think they handled his championship reign. They didn't elevate the championship or him in the process of his title reign. It's not that he was a bad champion or bad in the ring. I don't think creative did a good job. Now, again, I like this matchup. I think it's going to be a hell of a match. But if you're trying to increase your audience past that diehard hardcore audience that already tunes in, maybe it could have been someone else. Like you're talking about bridging the gap between him and who Isa was alluding to earlier, which I would love to see happen, but let it build, let it marinate, let it season, let the juices soak in, you know what I mean, before that happens. But until then, it's almost like you have Punk kind of aligning himself with FTR, and there's another group on the other side, a former champion and also someone who is known to a wide audience other than the diehards in Y2J. So you have a tag team there and him. I'm not saying put the title on Y2J. I'm saying there's a rivalry that you can build to that could bring in new eyes and hopefully, you know, elevate that audience, because that's the goal at the end of the day. It is the wrestling business at the end of the day. And as a fan, I want to see this Tanahashi match, but as thinking from a business standpoint, I want to see something that more eyes would see.
I see what you're saying, and I'll put another lens on it. I'll look at it from a booker's perspective, because when it comes to Forbidden Door, this is not going to be a situation where Tony Khan is booking all the winners and losers. It's going to be a co-collaboration effort between both the AEW and New Japan creative teams, and they don't want Punk to lose a major marquee matchup. And I think Tanahashi's at that stage of his New Japan career where I always hear, you know, the ace of New Japan, his lengthy title reigns of the past, his Wrestle Kingdom main events. But his time has kind of passed. He's now in that stage where I feel he can lose big matches and still retain his star power. I believe he lost to Chris Jericho when they faced each other on a New Japan match before, while Chris Jericho was not going to beat guys like Okada or Kenny Omega when he was at the height of his powers in New Japan. So I look at this more of what's the biggest guy we can put against CM Punk while also making sure CM Punk still goes over. And Tanahashi seems like the safest bet. Isa, does that align with any of your thinking?
Yeah, it does. It does. I was actually doing a watch along on my channel, and a lot of people were like hoping for Okada to be the one that came out of
Mhm.
that tunnel, when CM
Mhm.
Punk made the call. And I couldn't help but to think you have to have CM Punk win this match, at Forbidden Door. And I can see CM Punk walking away victorious without hurting anybody in the process of the booking of the match. So yeah, I'm with you on that perspective when it comes to this match.
Because as we know, we want Punk to stay strong until he eventually loses that AEW title. And I think we might have seen the first seed planted towards that storyline here tonight in the very next segment. Maxwell Jacob Friedman live on AEW Dynamite tonight. A shock to me when I saw that this was announced leading up to the show, because that stretcher job made it seem like he was being written off TV for a while. And when they advertised this segment, it was on Twitter with no words. It was on Instagram with no caption. I'm like, what is going on here? And then he spoke, and we got the Pipe Bomb 2022 edition. Yes, I'm ready to call it that. Oh,
that was a nuke.
No.
That was a nuke. That wasn't a pipe bomb. That was a nuke.
I was going to call it the Max Bomb, but why don't we call it the Max Nuke?
The Max Nuke. I like that.
The Max Nuke. I think that's what we're coining it. Well, anyways, what a promo from MJF. He aired all of his grievances. This was a complete shift from where that Wardlow storyline was just 3 days ago. All the rumors and innuendos that we were reading on websites and seeing on Twitter were publicly aired tonight. Him mentioning lines about how Tony Khan reserves all the big money for the ex-WWE guys. And then he asks, would I be more valued if I was an ex-WWE guy? And he ends this promo looking straight down into the camera saying, fire me, Tony, you effing Mark. What? Wow. The molecules in the room have changed, guys. I sat up. I perked up. I was like, oh my God, I am enthralled with a pro wrestling storyline once again. And I was like, when's the last time I felt this? Oh, that's right. MJF versus CM Punk just a month ago. This guy has the Midas touch. Everything he touches turns to gold. And I am enamored right now with wherever this storyline goes. I'm only upset because I know AEW loves their slow burns and loves their long-term booking, and we're likely only going to get little tiny tidbits until this eventually culminates months and months down the line. Jimmy, I'll go to you first for this one. What was your initial reaction to MJF's Max Bomb as you penned it?
Oh my goodness. What words can describe it? It was intense. It was, and you know what? It was laced with so many truths, because some of the stuff he said, you can list this and list that. But one of the things he talked about was him getting the audience invested, interested in what he does, regardless of whether it's with his words, what he does in the ring. He doesn't have to do a twisting, burning 450 hammer Phoenix splash to get a rise out of the crowd. He could do it by just looking at them. Here's a young man who's 26 years old, who, for someone so young, gets it so much. He's got all the tools, and whether this is a work, whether this is, I don't care. I am interested. I want to see more of him. I want to see this happen somewhere down the road. And you talked about a slow burn, Liam. I'm all for it. You take your time, because like you said, he has the Midas touch right now. Everything he touches and says turns to gold. And as long as he can keep that going, and after especially planting the seeds that he planted tonight, I'm all for it.
Killer Denzel seems to agree. Writing MJF's promo tonight was CM Punk pipe bomb level. It was golden masterpiece for him talking about the company and ex-WWE guys that Tony Khan is working with. Isa, I saw your face light up as soon as we shifted to MJF. Tell me all of your initial thoughts.
Listen, I've been very vocal about MJF being my favorite thing about All Elite Wrestling television for a long time. So this is no bandwagon comment here. MJF has been a reason for me to tune into All Elite Wrestling for quite a while now. I was also very vocal about how I feel going into every pay-per-view, he has the best built feud, which we're talking months in advance. If you're only doing 4 pay-per-views a year, you have months to build the storylines. And MJF, like Jimmy says, gets it. And he does just that. So you're so invested. But tonight, I'm sorry, like I when you couldn't think he could get on a different level, he just like completely just took the escalator, he took the elevator and he broke it. That elevator is not coming back down from what MJF did tonight. He broke the fourth wall. The passion in which he delivered this, it felt real. And let me tell you something. CM Punk had just got done cutting a promo that I felt was very good, where he said, hey, I made mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. I love what CM Punk had to say. So we saw real in two very different aspects. I'm going to tell you something. As soon as there was rumors that, you know, some big executives might be there tonight because of the numbers. And I know he mentioned that on his promo. Because of the numbers that MJF does, I didn't think that we were going to see this show with no MJF. Like, it wouldn't make any sense if you're going to have your top executives watching the show maybe live tonight. You're not going to keep your top rated segment out of television. But let him go out there and just give him freedom. I am a newer wrestling fan, right? I came back, I watched on and off, but I came back into it around 2014. So for this new generation, and I know they talk about the key demo a lot, to get that moment that just sinks you right in and you go to say, holy shit, I love wrestling. I think everybody deserves to have that moment. And I think MJF delivered that for AEW wrestlers, and not even. I have people texting me afterwards because they were seeing it around social media, little clips, little this, little that, saying, I really need to start watching this. And I'm like, I've been telling you, I've been telling you to watch this. So it's incredible to see this, because you go back and you talk about the pipe bomb to so many people, right? Because we don't see that realness anymore when it comes to professional wrestling. And I'm a fan of everything that went on. I was doing a watch along, and I gotta tell you, I was speechless. And it's very hard to leave me speechless. I was just doing a quiet scream, like I could not stop screaming at everything that he was saying. And from a women's perspective, that was sexy as hell. Just throwing that out there.
Well,
we'll take your word for it.
we will take your word for it. And you said something that also got my interest, because I thought, as soon as MJF was on TV tonight, okay, this is going to be a work, and they're going to use some elements that were actually real beforehand. But you also mentioned, TV executives being there. Could this be a situation where we heard rumblings before that Tony Khan and MJF reached a financial agreement to have him work Double or Nothing very late? Could that be a repeat scenario? Is this actually the brewing of a storyline? Or was this, hey, MJF, here's your live mic. We want to appease these Warner execs, work your magic, and hopefully we get something out of it. Jimmy, I'll ask you. I know everyone's so sick of these two magic words in pro wrestling, but is this a work or is this a shoot?
Like I said, in my opinion, this is my opinion. I believe this is an elaborate work that they've been keeping to themselves. And if it is, then bravo. Because one of the hardest things to do these days is take something this elaborate, this intense, and something that's so heated, and keep it in a tight circle where it doesn't get leaked out to anybody. And if it's not, and this is something that a byproduct of a real situation, then, hats off to MJF for being professional enough to show up at the pay-per-view and do his work and do what he's supposed to do and that sort of thing. But the back of my mind is telling me this is a brilliant job of working everybody.
And like you said, if it's going to work, it needs to be a very tight-knit inner circle. We're talking only MJF, only Tony Khan, and only his future opponent, which I probably believe is CM Punk, who's a guy that you want to have on your side when it comes to a work-shoot situation, because he knows how to manipulate the crowd. And also, it's 2022. It's been 11 years since the summer of Punk at Money in the Bank in 2011. The wrestling news sites are a lot more active nowadays. You have a lot more ears listening in. So you have CM Punk with the old school mentality of possibly aiding MJF, while MJF also having the new school mentality of having the whole, okay, how do I still play undercover here while everyone and their mother is tuning in to all of my whereabouts? Isa, I want to ask you something along the lines of the CM Punk stuff, because I don't just bring up his name out of theory. During the commercial break, and not a picture-in-picture scenario, you had to hunt through Twitter to find this out. CM Punk himself came limping out from backstage to confront MJF. He got up to the ring apron, and MJF got out of the ring and walked away through the crowd. Did you see that on Twitter? And if you did, what are we thinking is happening?
So I didn't see it because I was doing a watch along, so I stay away from social media. I try to just stay, with my YouTube audience. That being said, my main concern in regards to MJF is, while I admire the fact that he manages to stay on top without sniffing a world title, it bothers me as an MJF fan that you haven't seen him in a world, like in a title picture, not even just the world title, even the TNT. We have not seen MJF in a title picture in a long time. And as an MJF fan, that bothers me. And I think that adds up to what he was, referring to tonight. You know what I mean? Like, MJF did everything he could to make the CM Punk feud work. And on top of that, he beat CM Punk on their original, on their first match. And the fact that CM Punk is now the world champ makes you go like, oh, okay. Because CM Punk would have not won without Wardlow. Let's just be clear about that. Anyways, I'm a big fan of mixed cocktails. And to Jimmy's point, I do feel there's a little bit of, maybe it started as a work. Maybe there is a little aspect of MJF that's annoyed at the fact that all these guys are coming in, maybe making more than him. You also signed that contract before all of this started happening. So I think this is a little bit of a mix of a shoot and a work. I think that wrestling news have been fed different things. And I think that if there's somebody that's well aware of that, it's Tony Khan. I think Tony Khan is very connected to the wrestling media and who's talking and who's doing what. So again, if this is an elaborate work, bravo. Regardless, this is a promo that will, in the 3 years of All Elite Wrestling, is going to go down as one of my favorite moments, top 3 as of right now in Dynamite history.
Jimmy, I just saw a light bulb go
No,
off.
it's because sometimes they say the most hated heel usually can become one of the most beloved baby faces down the road. And if it ends up being where MJF becomes the spokesperson for the AEW locker room, against the ex-WWE guys, and he becomes their like, hey, I'm sticking up for you guys kind of thing. The guys who are getting looked over because these are the guys that came in, from the other guys and blah, blah, blah. I just see the potential there for there being a double turn.
Jimmy, I feel like we just became best friends. I feel like we just became best friends because I'm telling you, I feel like there's been 5 AEW world champs, 3 of them former WWE champs. I don't count Kenny Omega as a grown home talent. The only person was him and Adam Page. And we can argue that maybe out of all of the champions, he had the worst reign. So are they really catering to the home and grown? And I get it. Hangman Page had a career before AEW. I didn't know who he was before AEW, right? So who are we catering to here? And it's just like, is MJF being a heel? Or is he really standing up for the people that help AEW become the company that it is, that allows CM Punk to say, hey, maybe I'll go back to wrestling. Bryan Danielson said, hey, I think I'm going to leave this side and go to that side. Mox walking into that first Double or Nothing. You know what I mean? It took people like MJF for these big names to say, I think I'm going to switch sides. And I think MJF is in every right to stand up for the people that make that happen for them.
I'm grinning ear to ear at this at the potential of this storyline, because Jimmy, you mentioned it earlier when I said that I'm just impatient. I want to see the payoff now, but I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to have the summer of MJF, and that's one thing. I started watching pro wrestling. I'll never forget. It was October 2011. I was flicking through the channels trying to find the World Series. I ended up on Monday Night Raw, and I was just hooked. But I was so close. I missed the summer of Punk in 2011. The thought of that being replicated here, the whole work, shoot, what is real, what is fact, what is fiction environment, redone with MJF in the CM Punk role, and the poetic justice of CM Punk possibly being in the John Cena role of the protected champion, the guy that the people behind the scenes really want. It's art. It's art. This is why people say like pro wrestling is great storytelling, because of how it rhymes and how, if you're really invested in the lore that comes behind it and what the years leading up and all the different feuds, it's all coming together. And I think we're in the middle of something beautiful.
It's really funny that you bring that up, Liam, because I can tell you exactly the moment that I got back into it. And Unrelated, but hear me out. I took my nephew for his birthday present to a show. I wasn't watching wrestling anymore. I watched it on and off, growing up, but then I had to go to college, and that was probably a bigger priority than watching wrestling. So I took him to a show. It was in 2014, and I remember seeing the Shield come down through the entrance. I remember seeing Roman Reigns, and I was like, oh, I've been missing out. I need to start watching this, right? So my nephew at that time was the biggest John Cena fan. And I started watching wrestling, and I become the biggest Seth Rollins fan, which this is when he broke up the Shield, and he's like, everybody hates him. And I'm like, I love Seth Rollins. So it was just funny because one of the people that texted me tonight saying me I need to start watching All Elite was my nephew, who's all grown now. He's a Marine. He's deployed, bless his heart, wherever he is. And he's like, why am I not surprised that you like this guy? Because he told me, he's like, ever since you came back to watching wrestling, you always root for the bad guys. And I'm like, but he's not a bad guy. I thought he had some valid points there, and I feel like now that wrestling mentality has changed and we have so much access to the behind the scenes things, there is something there about the heel that has a valid point that you want to root for them that we didn't have back in the day when we didn't have all this access to this information, that I think this MJF story could really become something fun to watch and follow for newer fans that didn't get to experience that back in the day.
There's layers to this stuff, and it's really, really
many
cool.
layers.
Yeah, we have a lot more Dynamite to cover, but I do want to get to this one super chat before we move on from the MJF stuff. Bear Hudson, thank you so much for sending in the super chat. He says, based on the information we know, do we really think MJF would really sign with WWE? I can't imagine Tony Khan letting MJF sign with WWE. It would be a bad look for homegrown stars of how valuable they are. A year ago, I would say I can never imagine. I think he's playing up the whole bidding war of 2024 for his character. And behind the scenes, Max Friedman, as he dropped on Dynamite tonight, which was really cool. I think he's very loyal to Tony Khan. Now, with everything that transpired in the past couple months, I think those lines have been a little blurred. I think when the dust finally settles, he will stay in AEW. I'll never forget. I went to Dynamite in Rochester back in September, where he dropped the infamous, 4 Pillars promo. And he talked about the guys who are going to be carrying AEW for the next 25 years. That's a big commitment, but I honestly do see MJF as that guy who's with AEW until the day he retires because he cares. He's able to have storyline fulfillment that he really wouldn't get in WWE because of all the hoops you have to jump through.
Well,
does that align with what you're thinking? Or
I think let's just put it this way. The recent defection of Cody Rhodes back to WWE, I think, changes the numbers a little bit, so to speak, because we see now that Cody Rhodes is doing. Man, I love what Cody's doing right now. It is awesome.
Me too.
And the one misconception about Vince is if he sees this talent. He sees what he could do. The only thing that worries me is a potential name change because we see that happen with people who are being called in. But I don't see that happening with MJF. But I think he won't be given as much freedom as he has in AEW, but he would be given some creative freedom to be that Maxwell Jacob Friedman character.
Isa, what are your thoughts?
I before even the promo, as hype as I am, I do have to talk about some of the statements that Tony Khan made today that we saw, roaming around wrestling.com. It's actually where I read it, where Tony Khan says, hey, 2024 is a long way from now. It is 2022. And I felt like that was Tony Khan's own way of saying, I don't care what he wants. He's signed through 2024 and I can hold him accountable for this contract that he signed. So even if he goes to WWE, I don't see it happening until then, unless, there's some kind of arrangement made and it's going to be a big court mess because he does have a contract until January 1st of 2024. So, even if he goes to WWE, I don't see it happening anytime soon. Especially after what we saw tonight. I think everybody's all involved in this MJF is not happy storyline, and he's probably the happiest that he's ever been. We won't know.
We've been talking about this one particular segment for 25 minutes, and I still have goosebumps right now. I think we're in store for
I can't wait to go watch it back because I was live on my channel and now I'm live here and I haven't been able to just really go back and just watch it. Like I need to watch it a million times again.
because there's always a little thing in there where you go, oh, I missed that. Oh, because because I'm popping for certain things that he said, and but it was brilliant. It was brilliant.
I'm telling you, I was just screaming. I literally was screaming, and I got pregnant. It was so good that I got pregnant. I have babies. My babies have babies, and those babies have babies from this promo. That's how good this segment was. That should wrap it up.
I completely agree. And also, too, when it comes to watching it back, we got to watch it back on DVR because it is nowhere on Instagram. It is nowhere on Twitter. I don't know if they'll post it to YouTube. I like how they're blurring the lines, though, with that because it makes it feel.
I know. And did you notice that commentary didn't mention it at all afterwards?
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing.
So good. Because I was hoping when they did the MJF and CM Punk, their first face-to-face promo, which was absolutely incredible, AEW uploaded their entire back and forward to their YouTube channel. And I will tell you, before I got on here, I refreshed the AEW feed on YouTube, and I'm like, they haven't uploaded it yet. Like, I need to see this entire promo. The fact that they're, like, playing along with it just makes it that much better.
Exactly.
I completely agree. Guys, I said we were going to move on, but we still got more super chats to get to regarding this MJF segment. Allison writing, if MJF did go to WWE, do you think he can bring the ratings up for them? Jimmy, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely, because especially in WWE, when people are invested in characters, that's what he does. He draws people in. And obviously that AEW crowd that cracks on WWE, a lot of them tune into WWE as well, whether it's just to crack on them or whatever the case may be. He's a guy that could draw an audience. And I think he would be very successful in WWE.
We have another.
And MJF has been like proven. He brought it up in the promo that he is the highest rated segment that AEW has. It was part of his amazing promo tonight. He knows his word. He knows the audience that he's bringing. And we were talking about Bray Wyatt on the beginning of the show. MJF is someone that I will follow too if he left AEW wherever he decides to go.
And you got some merchandising. He could come out with a T-shirt next week that says "Fire Me, Tony."
And also too with pro wrestling tees, not necessarily all being official AEW. Some could be independently printed tees. You got some in there. And Isa, you mentioned too, beyond just the creative freedom, it's the money factor. That's what MJF wants, and that's what Leonza is saying here with her super chat. Thank you so much for sending that in. Wu-Tang said it best: cash real, everything me. Cream get the money, dollar bills, yo. That's what I think about MJF potentially going to WWE. Jimmy, I'll ask you this one real quick before we move on. Is this all about the money for MJF, or is it about some creative fulfillment too?
Of course, the money plays a factor in it, but I think there's a lot. I think it's a little bit of everything. Because like I said earlier, here's a young talent who gets it. And one of the things that when you're enthralled and you dig your teeth into this business, you want to be able to create as well. And MJF is one of these guys you can tell wants to create. And I think he would be given more of an opportunity, probably in AEW, to be free to do what he wanted. But at the same time, I think WWE would give him enough creative input to continue elevating and, evolving the MJF character.
I got one last super chat, the actual last one regarding the MJF stuff, and I'll pitch this one to Isa. Allison writes, do you think WWE was watching the show and WWE stars were watching too? I assume this being particularly regarding the MJF promo. Isa, what are your thoughts?
Yes, 100%. And even if they weren't watching, they're forced to afterwards. The buzz around this promo is big enough that it's going to make some people go out of their way to see what it is that was said.
I completely agree. Well, as we move on, Ralph the Ace also says kayfabe is alive and well thanks to MJF. Cheers, guys. Thank you so much, Ralph, for supporting the podcast. We move on. Johnny Elite, John Morrison, Johnny Mundo, Johnny Nitro, whatever. Johnny Impact is also there too, making his return to AEW tonight, and he unfortunately was submitted by the returning Miro. The first time we've seen Miro back on AEW television since Full Gear 2021, where he obviously lost in the Eliminator Tournament Finals to Bryan Danielson. Jimmy, I'll go to you first on this one. What was your reaction to seeing Miro back in an AEW squared circle, and where do you think his first program is now that he's back?
That's an interesting question. The first program is a tough one to figure out, but I like the promo. I did like the promo. It sounded intense. It sounded very Miro, and it established him. And against Johnny Elite, I thought it was interesting. He dominated most of the match. It almost felt like it was I hate to put it this way because Johnny's so much better than this, but a glorified enhancement match. But Johnny is a guy who can get guys over, and that's what he did with Miro. He made him look like $1 million. As far as who his next opponent will be, he was being cheered, so it's tough to say. You got to find the right heel opponent for him. And man, give me a few minutes, and maybe Isa's got somebody.
We'll circle back to you on that. Isa, what are your thoughts on Miro's return to AEW? What's lined up for him?
All right, before we get into Miro, I just have to say one thing, right? So Johnny Elite is not signed to All Elite Wrestling. We know that's clear. So I couldn't help but to wonder, like, imagine waiting in Gorilla to come out after that MJF promo. Like, in my imagination, I wanted to picture that Johnny doesn't know anything going on, and he's just like, do I go out there now? You know what I mean? Like, imagine just being in that position of having to follow that MJF promo, which the return of Miro absolutely made you move on from the moment, even if you didn't want to, because, oh my God, have I missed Miro on All Elite Wrestling. And I feel bad for Johnny Elite because it's the second time we see him on Dynamite, and both times he has just been losing. But I'm going to say Scorpio Sky. I feel like the TNT Championship has not been where it needs to be ever since Miro dropped it. And all his promos back then were about how he was God's champion. He needs to go back and get that title back. So I can't wait to see Miro elevate the TNT title again like he did.
That's a very good call. You know, I wish I would have thought of that first, but it also works too because he can go through Ethan Page to get to Scorpio.
And if I might jump in here, I don't want him to take the title off of Scorpio Sky. And the only reason why I say that is because what I loved about the TNT title division, if we can even call it that, is how many fresh faces get brought in, especially with Cody's reign back in the day when he would have the open challenges. So many fresh faces challenging for the title. We just got over the Sammy Guevara and Scorpio Sky saga, which was back and forth for so long. Of course, Miro has been absent from the TNT title picture since that Dynamite that I attended that I mentioned way back in Rochester when Sammy Guevara defeated him for said title. But still, he's a familiar face. You know, he's the previous champion before the hot potato-ness between Sammy Guevara and Scorpio Sky, and also Cody Rhodes holding the title scarcely there as well. I'd like to see some fresh faces, and also I don't want to put Miro in a situation to where he's eventually going to have to lose. I like the idea of having him have some mini feuds here and there. I honestly think maybe something with Team Taz. I think maybe a recruitment angle, possibly. I think he might fit in with that crowd, but I also like him as a solo act. The only reason why I bring it up is because factions dominate AEW television, and it's hard to get TV time when you're just on your own. MJF is the only exception.
Liam, did you take a look at the rankings today? Because they updated them today. Did you take a look at the rankings today?
I did, but I didn't hyper analyze them because it was all one graphic this time.
Yeah.
Okay. Number one in the rankings for the men's right now
is Wardlow.
Right? So regardless of what happens here, somebody's dropping a title soon.
This is true.
It's weird.
Hero goes and feud with somebody else.
It's weird that
Scorpio Sky.
Yeah, it's weird that the person who has had one officially under AEW contract match is number one. Anyway, I digress.
The rankings, as much as I love the concept going into AEW, I find it more often than not them booking themselves into a corner. So who knows what happens with Miro, but great to see him back. Lana, CJ Perry kind of spoiling it for me on Twitter beforehand. She noted that she was going to be tuning in, especially to tonight's Dynamite. I know rumors were leading up to Miro's return being imminent, but still, I appreciated the surprise for as much as I was kind of expecting it. We now move on to the Jericho Appreciation Society. They hit the ring. They parade around, glorifying themselves for winning the Anarchy in the Arena match. But then they're interrupted by Eddie Kingston, who is with William Regal. And whenever William Regal is near and there's a big faction warfare going on, I think of two words. And he can't say war games, but he announces blood and guts in that famous Regal Vigor voice. I loved it. I was so enthralled. It's this perfect continuation of where he kind of left off in NXT. And eventually, you know, even though the JAS don't accept immediately, we do get Ortiz in the ring, hitting Jericho with that sock, cutting some of his hair. Jericho agrees to the match and also demands a hair versus hair match with Ortiz, which is signed for Road Rager later this summer. Jimmy, what are your thoughts on Blood and Guts returning? And we're going to run it back with the Anarchy in the Arena participants.
No, I like it. It needed to happen. And like you said, Eddie Kingston is another special talent because here's a guy who comes out and feels so real. Every time I see him and hear him, he feels real. And Jericho is just, again, he feels rejuvenated. You can see it in him, you know, working there in AEW. So this Blood and Guts match kind of makes sense coming up. Happening, and the hair versus hair thing is, you know what? What's old is new again. This thing worked back in the day, and it'll work today, especially with someone like Jericho and that long hair. And you know, I used to know what that felt like, but hey, it works for me. I enjoy it. I think I'm looking forward to it. They're making me anticipating wanting to see this, and that's the goal.
Real quick, just wanted to bring up this comment. Headlock Heel says, Tony Khan is such a mark, according to MJF, that he recognized Wardlow's wins while he was contracted with MJF. That's how I'll fill in plot holes of the story. You know what? I kind of love that headcanon. I'm riding with it. Shout out Headlock Heel. Isa, your thoughts on Blood and Guts? And also, is Jericho due for a haircut?
Yes, he is. I scream again. My entire watch along was just me screaming because it was such a good episode of Dynamite tonight. But I scream when Regal just yelled out Blood and Guts. I guess that's the new war game scream. I wanted, you know, John Moxley, Bryan, and everybody and company to win on Sunday. And when I saw the Jericho Association Society win, I was like, okay, this can only happen because we have to go into something else. The problem is, how do you top what they did this Sunday? That Anarchy in the Arena match was just so much fun. My favorite thing on the entire show for Double or Nothing. So I'm excited for it. And I do think that Jericho already needs a haircut. I actually can't believe I fell for it, but I, again, scream out loud when he cut a chunk of his hair out. So I'm already excited. I'm already invested in this hair versus hair match.
Yeah, I hope we get Bon Jovi Jericho back. I like that hairstyle. That's when I was first introduced to him, you know, back in 2011 when he had or 2012 when he had the feud with CM Punk. It's all coming full circle here on tonight's edition of AEW.
The circle of life, Simba.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Circle.
Here on it, the inner circle. Oh my God, all the circle puns. Bray Wyatt too. He has the little circle emoji on his Twitter handle now too. So much full circle moments, and that I guess continues with Samoa Joe backstage at AEW Double or Nothing. He was attacked by Jay Lethal and company, something we didn't see on the pay-per-view itself, but a brief little segment just to kind of remind us that Samoa Joe is indeed still on the roster and is still feuding with Jay Lethal and his Ring of Honor crew. Jimmy, I'll go to you first with this one. Any thoughts on this backstage segment, or was it kind of forgettable?
It felt like it was thrown in, and I guess they're trying to explain. Maybe Joe's going to be off for a little while, taking care of some nagging injuries, whatever the case may be, and maybe this was a way to showcase that. But at the same time, that's one of the only issues. You know, we talked before about tightening screws and stuff like that. Sometimes I feel like they try to throw too much at you in the 2 hours that they have. Yes, I get it. They have a huge stacked roster and so forth, but sometimes you just got to let things rest, and you can explain it later. You can explain it on Friday, whatever the case may be.
You know what this kind of reminds me of is before they launched NXT UK as an actual show, they would weave in NXT UK storylines onto weekly NXT television just to kind of remind us, hey, this division still exists and we're planning on doing more with it pretty soon. I think that's kind of what Ring of Honor is right now on AEW programming, just to remind us that when eventually they do launch some sort of weekly Ring of Honor TV, it's not like it's been completely forgotten about for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's actually been weaved in, and yes, forced in. I always kind of laugh at the very beginning of Dynamite when Excalibur, Tony Schiavone run down all the matches and as fast as they can before the graphics expire on our screens. Isa, any thoughts on the Samoa Joe feud with Jay Lethal? Is this getting a little stale for you, or where's your head at with it?
Not yet, but I thought that him losing the Owen Hart tournament was going to be because they cost in the match. I didn't want to see Adam Cole get some help. I would have rather seen these people come out and take down Samoa Joe So I wish they would have done this on Sunday. Other than that, I give them respect for keeping Ring of Honor in the back of our heads. We saw it with FTR coming out with the Ring of Honor championships on the beginning of the show with CM Punk, the new AEW World Champion. And then we saw Ring of Honor a little bit play around here. So I respect that they're keeping them on TV.
Isa, looks like you got some fans over in the super chat as well. As Allison says, Isa, you should try and go and save WWE, bring the ratings up. Just kidding. And
you're just kidding. No.
James,
it would happen.
Agree, Miss Allison. Isa for WWE correspondent. So if you ever want to do more than just, the watch alongs on Twitch, I think you got some fans that want to see you backstage at WWE. Moving forward, though, with AEW now to about our halfway point, I believe. Big 10-man tag action with the Undisputed Elite, Red Dragon, the Young Bucks, and Hikuleo from New Japan Pro Wrestling representing the Bullet Club. A nice little touch on commentary with them saying that Adam Cole had called over Jay White for a favor, very much planting the seeds of the Undisputed Elite and Bullet Club being a joined forces come Forbidden Door. They defeated the team of Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, Christian Cage, Matt Hardy, and Darby Allin. Adam Cole was on commentary for the whole match. Jeff Hardy did accompany Matt out to ringside, commentary addressing the fact that he is just very banged up right now and is not in ring shape. Bucks ended up hitting the Meltzer driver for the win. Jimmy, what were your thoughts on this 10-man tag action?
Yeah, it started off like a tag match, and it broke into fun chaos. Let's put it that way. And yes, I've complained before issues with tag rules in AEW and sometimes not being enforced. But in a situation like this, when it's a 10-man tag match, you got to let some things slide. And like I said, to me, it was fun. They had me interested. Future rivalries coming out of this, like continuing the Hardys and Bucks situation once Jeff gets back on his feet. I'm looking forward to seeing that continue. You know what I mean? So again, I could nitpick these little things, but at the end of the day, I had fun watching it.
Isa, any thoughts on the 10-man tag?
Yeah, I'm with Jimmy on this. I think that based on what we heard from the reports, it seems like Jeff Hardy's been pretty banged up since that Darby Allin match, and I'm not surprised. He's wrestled every week after that, and that match was so physical. Let him take some time off. There's enough people in the roster to keep this going, in some kind of way. I was happy to see Christian Cage in action. He's like outwork everyone when he never really works. So I was happy to see him in the ring tonight. But this was fun chaos, like Jimmy said, and it's just a way to keep some of your major names out there. I did think that we were going to see some of the main people out being the first show in LA. I really thought they delivered tonight. It felt very reminiscent of Grand Slam when they first came to New York for the first time. It was such a big deal. I felt that tonight could have been a TV special, or it could have been built differently, because that's how good this show was. And this match was fun. Jungle Boy taking the pin. Jungle Boy loses a lot when the tag titles are not in the line, and I'm keeping an eye on that, to be honest with you.
That's a very good point. You bring up a very good point. Another thing I noticed that I appreciated with this match too was not even what happened in the ring. Adam Cole on commentary, I thought was an absolute delight. There's often times where I feel like, we're just forcing guys onto commentary to, again, get them exposure on TV. There was just something about the way he was chiming in that felt so authentic. His frustration about, come on, guys, what's going on here? Like him essentially getting really annoyed with his stable. And that's something you never really see from Adam Cole. We saw this with the Undisputed Era. We've seen this before with his version of Bullet Club and Ring of Honor. He always brings his people up while always making sure he's still a level above. You never really see him bring down the people around him. So I thought that added layer of him getting frustrated with his teammates was something we haven't seen from Adam Cole before. And especially him coming off of the biggest win so far in his AEW tenure. Thought that was like a little, and I don't know if it was deliberate, but maybe he's starting to get a little bit of a big head. We did get a tease of that way back in Ring of Honor, if you guys remember, when he fired the Young Bucks from the Bullet Club.
Yeah.
Then resulted in Kenny Omega, Marty Scurll coming in and everything. So who knows? Maybe this is the seed being planted for cracks in the Undisputed Elite. Something that kind of caught my ear. Jimmy, did that catch your ear as well?
Well, now that you brought it up, it caught my ear. I didn't. It's interesting because it's these little things that sometimes can slide by you and you don't pick up on, and then someone points it out to you and you go, oh, you know what? That's right. And I thank you for pointing it out, because now that you said it, it makes perfect sense. And That's why I was thinking back to before the match was set between Adam Cole and Samoa Joe. I was wondering if it would have been Kyle O'Reilly instead. Can you imagine and them starting it there? Again, fantasy booking past tense, so to speak, that going into the match, Adam Cole saying, okay, lie down for me. And Kyle saying, no, what do you mean lie down? You know what I mean? So starting the rivalry or the dissension there. But hey, I'm all for the slow burn.
I'm all for the slow burn as well. I think we got a lot of slow burn storylines brewing right now. In
seeds are being planted. Let's put it that way.
Seeds are being planted, and they probably won't sprout for quite some time. But when they do, I think we have a very plentiful garden on our hands. We now move backstage to a segment between Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee being interviewed. Swerve introducing some of his just wealthy, very well-connected friends from the LA area, which all come off as authentic too, because if you follow him on social media, this dude hangs around with some pretty big A-list stars. He's on red carpets. He's at Billboard Music Awards and all that. So I thought that helped kind of elevate his star power a little bit. And one thing I appreciated from this backstage segment too, they felt more like a tag team. Isa, you were on the Double or Nothing podcast with me on Sunday. I was very vocal about how none of the teams except the tag champions in that tag title match felt like a genuine tag team. Everyone felt like two single stars forced together because they don't have anything else to do on TV. This backstage promo, I'm not going to say I'm fully bought in, but Swerve in our glory, I'm starting to get a little behind it. Isa, what were your thoughts on this very small promo?
I mean, possibly it felt very random to me. Let me drop some names here while we're live on TV, but it's okay. You know, like I'm fine for them keeping them on TV and keeping them in the back of our heads. They are still in the rankings, and I think everybody looked great on that tag team match. So, you know, if there's so much competition right now, this roster is so full of stars that if you have to keep Keith Lee and Swerve on a tag team, why not make sure that we know they're still there and they're still together?
Yeah. And I got to mention Headlock Heel in the comment section. We're on the same wavelength here. I was thinking the exact same thing, that with executives in the house, as you said, you know, presenting some celebrities, you know, looks good on them. Looks good for the company itself. Whether some people knew who they were or not is a different story. But at the same time, it doesn't matter because they are celebs nonetheless. So
I mean, they're no Bad Bunny. They're no Bad Bunny. I'm just gonna throw that out there as the biggest Bad Bunny mark in the world. They're no Bad Bunny, but hey, nice try, you know.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh shit! Sorry.
That's okay. Happens.
Well, we got her back. No worries. Well, yeah, I think that's a very fair like assessment of that backstage promo. It was nothing. It honestly was very random per se. But I do think it did help, at least me personally, buy in a little bit more to that tag team. We now move forward to another interview. This one taking place at the top of the ramp with Tony Schiavone interviewing the very newly signed Athena, the former Ember Moon from WWE, a very heavily decorated female athlete coming now into AEW. She says she's here for the top competition and specifically wants to break Jade Cargill's streak. Jade eventually interrupts with the baddie section and Stokely Hathaway, another fresh AEW signing, who refers to himself as Jade's publicist. A nice little layer. I like how Paul Heyman is the advocate. You know, we have other people saying that they're their representative, their legal counsel or whatnot. A publicist, a nice little added layer that's not necessarily just a manager per se. Jimmy, I'll go to you first for this one. Is Athena the woman to dethrone Jade Cargill? She
definitely has the skills, and she's really, really good in the ring, and she's well known because of her time in WWE. But then here we go again, talking about what MJF was talking about, going back to that promo, ex-WWE talents coming in and taking away from homegrown AEW stars. So I could see a good rivalry here, but in this situation, as much as I'd like to see Athena with the championship, I think Jade would be better off keeping it in this situation, just to take away that stigma of, hey, we're catering to the ex-WWE stars to elevate our product.
Isa, what are your thoughts?
So I'm sorry. I think Athena is incredible. She's not it. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. She was cutting this promo. I'm so happy for her. I feel legitimately from my heart, like so happy to see her in All Elite. And as soon as Jade comes out, she just has that it factor that you just go like, oh my God, look at her. I'm going to tell you the one thing that I'm looking forward to here is I've been very vocal about how I'd rather see Jade being booked to just squash everyone. To me, Jade looks like she could kick anybody's ass in 2 minutes. I hate seeing her in these long matches. I hated her match at Double or Nothing. But the one thing that Athena has that some of the opponents that Jade has faced to this date don't have is that I feel like Athena could carry her into a really good match. Even if Jade wins, we might actually see the best match that we've seen from her when she goes against Athena, because I actually think that Athena could really help elevate Jade, right? But I mean, is Athena gonna end up in that same Ruby Soho situation after that happens? I don't know, but I am looking forward to seeing Jade work with someone that might possibly really elevate her. But when Jade stepped out, and if I'm a casual viewer or if I'm a big time executive, like she just has it. She oozes whatever it is. Jade oozes it. So she's not losing anytime soon. No. And now with Stockley by her side, yeah, no way.
I do think that they are in a pretty weird predicament here. And honestly, I know they're teasing it. I hope this match just doesn't happen, at least for a while, because we've seen this before. I've mentioned this on past Wrestling Inc. podcasts. Ruby Soho comes in, immediately becomes number one contender, loses to Britt Baker, and then has momentum stall for months and months and months. Before her, it was Brian Cage. He won the ladder match, became number one contender, came in guns blazing against Jon Moxley. He lost to Moxley, and then Brian Cage has been MIA, not ever since. But, you know, his momentum has never been the same.
I don't know. I don't know if he'd be seen as a babyface move, but I need Jade to say, hey, what is she now? 33-0. I don't even know what she's up to. But she needs to tell Athena, build yourself up in order to be able to face me. And let's see Athena get a couple of wins before we actually see the match. We were talking about slow burns earlier. I want this to be a slow burn. And let's see Athena like really come out there and get established before we see her kind of like lose a match.
And also, I think we have an interesting potential storyline on our hands with Athena's finisher, the Eclipse or whatever they're going to call it in AEW. That's a move that you probably don't want anyone kicking out of, and you can build a very neat storyline of having her face Jade and Jade win, and then have the whole argument of, well, Athena never hit the Eclipse. And eventually, you know, you kind of do the whole Kenny Omega one-winged angel with Okada thing with Athena and Jade Cargill. And maybe when she does hit it, she wins the title upon a rematch. Or maybe when she does hit it, Jade Cargill kicks out. And we just keep building Jade up and up and up. But
in order for that kick out to mean something, then you really have to build Athena up towards the point that we know nobody kicks out of it. Otherwise, it's not going to mean anything. It's just going to be Jade getting another win.
Exactly. And that's what I mean about delaying this match, is because we need to build up not just Athena, but Athena's finisher as well. Because I'm going to say it, the Eclipse is on par with, you know, I don't want to say on par with the one-winged angel because that has so much history and everything in it. But it's that money move that when it's hit, you don't want anyone kicking out of it just based on the visual alone. So hopefully this is a match they build to for a very long time.
Especially in a day and age where we're seeing a lot of stuff getting kicked out of, where back in the day you'd say, no. You know what I mean? So let's keep some finishers that look devastating.
I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed here, Jimmy, because I've seen a lot of finishers in AEW now. I love AEW television, but there's a lot of finishers that I've seen being kicked out of that I'm like, that's impossible. That's impossible. No. So hopefully they don't mess this up.
Especially when they land straight like on their heads, anything like that. It kind of, but the part that bothers me even more than that, and again, I'm nitpicking here, or maybe not nitpicking, is even after the kick out, they're up and moving and running the ropes in like no time. It's like,
the selling needs some work here. Yes, agreed.
Being dropped on their heads, as MJF alluded to in his promo. That was another thing he mentioned. There's layers and layers and layers. We're going to be dissecting that for a very long time. But speaking of MJF, the man that defeated him this past Sunday at Double or Nothing, Wardlow, had his first official AEW contracted match on Dynamite tonight, and he defeated JD Drake in a very quick squash match. Hit the power bomb, 1, 2, 3. After the bell, Mark Sterling came out. Mark Sterling, Esquire, saying he's filing a lawsuit against Wardlow for attacking security, to which Wardlow responded by powerbombing more security. So that's where Wardlow is right now. Maybe we get a mini feud with Mark Sterling. I don't even know if you build to anything there. Maybe, Wardlow versus Tony Nese. But I think, as we've mentioned before, I think Wardlow is TNT title bound, whether that's next week or in a couple of months. But I think that's the end game for Wardlow right now. Jimmy, what were your thoughts on Wardlow moving forward now post MJF?
This match was against JD Drake was what it needed to be. Again, an enhancement match to put over the power of Wardlow. And yes, the suing angle is fine, and I don't mind a little rivalry there. But then what? Do you know what I mean? Like, he should plow right through Mark Sterling. He should plow right through Tony Nese. Even if they have a 2-on-1 handicap match against them, he should still, like you said, he is destined to somewhere down the road be their guy. But at the same time, I think we need to see more of him as opposed to more of him in the ring. If you get my drift.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Isa, what were your thoughts on Wardlow's quick squash match?
I told you on Sunday that I really, the only thing that I disliked about all of the MJF drama is that Wardlow's moment didn't feel like it was Wardlow's moment. And you have such a star in Wardlow. Don't let the ooze of this momentum go away. And this is how you can do that. Putting him in a feud that kind of means nothing. There's such a big roster that you could really build some matches that maybe don't need a title involved, but will still elevate Wardlow to that coronation moment that possibly we didn't get on Sunday because of all the backstage drama involving the storyline with MJF. I feel like Wardlow needs to go into a significant feud that is going to elevate him, not squash matches, not Mark Sterling. I love seeing him break, the papers in half and this and that. But I think that Wardlow has that it factor that we were just talking about with Jade. It's a matter of how do you book him post MJF. It's very important. Or where do we go from here with Wardlow? And I just don't think this is it. So hopefully it's something that we move on from, and then we see Wardlow elevating to something else, because I just don't want that momentum that he has going to just die out in a feud that just feels like it's nothing.
Before we move on to our final two matches, Grant Yenny sends in a super chat. Thank you so much, Grant. And he brings up a great point that we were talking about earlier. For the risk and abuse Athena's body takes after giving the eclipse, the fact that it wasn't protected in the past is disrespectful to her. I completely agree. This is not a move she needs to hit every single match. And when she does, it should put people away. It should be a last resort, nail on the coffin.
I remember being there live for her NXT debut, and a lot of people, there was such a big buzz around her. And I just remember not being familiar with her. And as soon as I saw that finisher, I was like, okay, I'm all in. That is a badass finisher, so I agree. I don't think anybody should have kicked out of that. And I think her main roster, because I did like her feud with Shayna Baszler, you know what I mean, in the meantime, and her trying to win this NXT Women's Championship and all of that. But her main roster run was just such a disappointment, and I'm hoping that AEW just does her some justice here. We'll see.
The finisher was great, and her WWE theme song too was an absolute banger. Loved that and everything she had there. Speaking of great entrance music, Ruby Soho, Toni Storm getting the win over Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter.
At 9:30 p.m. Let's just make sure that we point out that it was at 9:30 p.m.
And the significance?
They put them at 9:30 p.m. every week, which is the dead spot before the main event, Leo. Come on.
There's
three things guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and the women go on at 9:30 every Wednesday. And I'm going to repeat that until it stops happening.
You mentioned, Jimmy, before we went live, you mentioned some icebreakers in wrestling that once you hear something, you're never going to be able to unsee it. I'm going to be looking for that now on future episodes.
I do watch-alongs every Wednesday, and this has become a gimmick between me and my chat, because it's just what happens. And this was a great match, but the time you really put them in that time spot with the executives there to see them, come on.
That's the sad thing. Like you said, this was a very good tag match. The ladies worked really hard to put on one heck of a tag match, and they I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed the match very much, but like you said, it's the timing of it. I hate calling it the death spot.
It is the death spot. You and I know it, Jimmy. You and I know it.
I know. I just hate calling it that, but because these ladies deserve so much better. You know what I mean? And I get it. You got Mox versus Garcia, which we're going to talk about next, closing the show. But at the same time, why not going into that? I don't know if this would have worked, but what if you were to switch positions with the MJF promo and this ladies match? Because now the death spot becomes like must-see TV because you're anticipating MJF's promo the whole night. You're building up to it. You're building up to it. You're building up to it. And then you sock it to them at the 9:30, I don't know.
Yeah, no, they're never gonna put MJF there. I think they could have swapped them with Warlow or maybe a match that wasn't as meaningful. Maybe the 10-man match. That's what I would swap.
Or the start the
just
9
any
o'clock
spot.
hour.
That's not the 9:30 spot, but
Right.
it's being noticed, and I'm gonna repeat it, and I'm gonna call it out until it stops happening. So.
Yeah.
And Isa, your dog is clearly very
Yeah,
upset
my dog
about
is very upset about the women at 9:30 p.m.
Well, after the match was concluded, which did see Ruby Soho finally getting that pin on Britt Baker, which was very uncharacteristic of AEW, might I add, because very rarely do talent get their win back per se. We don't really do 50-50 booking in AEW. But, here's Britt Baker coming off the win on Sunday, getting the pin over Ruby Soho, and now we're going flip reverse. Ruby maybe laying claim to having a one-on-one singles rematch with Britt Baker down the line. After the bell, Britt and Jamie left the faces laying. They attacked them both, raised their hands, raised that Owen Hart Cup Tournament Championship above her head, and headed to the back. So it doesn't look like we are done with the whole Ruby Soho, Toni Storm feuding with Britt Baker's collection of bad guys. We'll see what happens in the future, and hopefully it's at a better time slot to make everyone happy and make sure as many eyes can get on those feuds as possible, because Britt Baker's money. Toni Storm is quickly rising in the ranks, and I think Jamie Hayter might be aligning herself with a faction very soon. I've been hearing, you're not hearing any actual rumors, but people are saying Blackpool Combat Club for Jamie Hayter, kind of fantasy booking a little bit. I could see it.
Maybe.
Yeah, they put themselves in this situation. Toni Storm and Ruby Soho desperately needed this win, so I'm glad they did get their win back.
Right.
Yeah, again, getting their win back is not always a bad thing. It's
very shocked that Britt took the pin, though. I thought Jamie would take the pin here. So
yeah, that surprised me as well. But again, like you said, it continues the story going forward.
Yeah,
it's a very good point. And we end with our main event: Jon Moxley defeating Daniel Garcia, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe was the main event of when CM Punk debuted on Rampage way back in August 2021. Yes. So I thought, that kind of running it back sense was cool, because back then Daniel Garcia was just aligned with 2.0. He was, the plucky guy who had just gotten signed and trying to get a spot on the card, and now he's very well established. And if you watch those matches back to back, I remember that Moxley, the first time they wrestled, not being a full-on squash, but Moxley very much in control. Yeah. This one, Garcia, a lot more aggressive, a lot more offensive, busting open Moxley. A nice little note on commentary mentioning that those are stitches he had from Anarchy in the Arena that were reopened, which I was like, okay, maybe that's a little better, because the visual of Daniel Garcia, this essential rookie in AEW, making Jon Moxley, the former, year-long champion, bleed. I was like, that's a little much for me. And then I realized, Stitch is just being open again.
Right, but Moxley's always bleeding. Yeah. He bled in his match with Wheeler Yuta. He might be smaller than Daniel Garcia. So
hey, that's a very good point. It eventually ended with Moxley submitting Garcia to the Bulldog choke. Jericho tried to interfere, but Kingston eventually did cut him off. And Moxley got a little promo at the very end saying he's very much in for Blood and Guts. Looks like it's happening June 29th. I believe that's locked in 3 days after Forbidden Door takes place on that Sunday. It's going to be a packed month of June for pro wrestling content. Jimmy, what were your thoughts on Moxley and Garcia? If you do remember that August match that they had, how did this one compare?
You know what? I don't remember the August match as much as I should, but this one was very good.
It was on Rampage, Jimmy. Nobody watched.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah, actually, believe it or not, the station up here that carries AEW in Canada does not carry Rampage. You have to go to their website to watch it.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, or have to wait to watch it later online or whatever the case may be. But I enjoyed this match. I thought it was very physical. I enjoyed hearing Regal and Jericho on commentary. That added to the match as well. under normal circumstances, I would have thought the blood was unnecessary, but coming out of Sunday because of the stitches, explaining that it was the stitches that were reopened, that made sense to me. And I like the ending too, with Eddie Kingston coming down and cutting off Jericho. Again, Eddie Kingston has got me hooked because I buy into everything he does. He feels so real.
He's so real.
That's a really great point. Isa, any thoughts on the ending of this match? One comment I didn't want to pull up before I toss to you. Iron Med saying, what was Eddie doing? He almost pulled a Titus. I noticed that too. He was sprinting to the ring. He almost lost his balance, and we might have seen him go under the ring. But fortunately, he made it there in time and cut Jericho off. What were your thoughts, Isa, on this main event?
Very fun match. I was saying respect to Moxley for wrestling after what any of them went through this Sunday. That Anarchy in the Arena match, I feel like it was equally brutal for everyone that participated in it. So just to see two of the men that were part of that match, main event Dynamite, respect to them. You know, we saw them beat up earlier when the Jericho Association Society was there without Daniel Garcia, and you could see like the scars of what went on Sunday. I think that this just hypes you up so much more for Blood and Guts. Because if you have a Moxley with a full-on Crimson Mask from the stitches, which I appreciated commentary reintegrated that, I didn't need it because I saw Double or Nothing, but maybe not everybody that's watching saw Double or Nothing, so I appreciated them reminding you of that. But if you're seeing that on a normal Wednesday night, what can we expect from Blood and Guts, right? So I think it just hypes people up even more for Blood and Guts. I really hope this episode of Dynamite does better in the ratings because I thought they really delivered tonight. I really do.
And this is an episode of Dynamite that I was saying to Jimmy before we officially went live. I was not that hot on Double or Nothing. I know, Isa, you were on the podcast with me, and I'm the super positive guy. I always try to be glass half full. But I sat on it for a couple nights, and I was like, I really don't think that has as much replay value as prior pay-per-views.
The last four matches do, in my opinion. Like, after the women came out, like the women Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeps, Anarchy in the Arena, the tag title in the main event, that's my replay value. Of a 5-hour pay-per-view to just want to go back and watch the last hour, that's very telling. Yeah,
I think that's part of the issue too. Like Liam was saying, we were talking about this a little bit. Maybe my anticipation was so high. And again, the length of the pay-per-view did have a little bit to do with it as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just want to give him the same energy. I'm very pro. I know, Liam, you're Mr. Positivity. I'm Mrs. Give the same energy to both companies. And I'm very critical of WWE when they put on this lengthy pay-per-views. And I have to give him the same energy. If you would have taken a few matches out of this card, this would have been absolutely incredible. But I feel like the length of the pay-per-view really hurt the replay value of Double or Nothing. But Liam, to your point, tonight, whatever is next for AEW, I'm super hyped coming out of Double or Nothing.
True.
Yeah, and we also mentioned I was saying that along the lines of if more people shared my sentiments of not being too hot, maybe this Dynamite doesn't do too crazy in the ratings. Yeah. And then I remember what Vince McMahon always says, where it doesn't matter what kind of show you put on, they only remember the finish. And the finish of Double or Nothing was CM Punk becoming AEW champion. And I think people probably wanted to tune in to that specifically, and also everything going on with MJF.
But you know, like the way that I judge these live wrestling shows, because we consume so much content as we're covering it and, you know, analyzing it. And the way that I see every show is like, if I have to tell you, go watch it afterwards, that's, you know, if it's must watch television, there was so many segments that were so good on tonight's Dynamite that I would tell people to go out of their way to watch the entire show. Where I haven't had a show like that with WWE in a long time. Like Raw, SmackDown, they haven't been must watch. Tonight, it was must watch.
And if you have to pick one thing to watch from tonight, I guarantee you got to go watch that MJF promo, because he should be wearing the $1 Million Man's tights, just dollar signs all over it.
That's Isa too. You mentioned the telling your friends to watch something and not really knowing how to describe it. Literally what happened with the MJF promo in real time. I just said MJF cut the promo of the decade. They're like, why? What did he say? I'm like, I don't even know. Just
watch it. I know.
Take my word for it and watch it. Before we wrap this up, though, we did get a very generous super chat from Ralph the Ace. Thank you so much for sending in that chat and supporting this podcast. He says, great show, guys. This is random. Love that AEW buys real theme music. Do you guys have a favorite underrated theme music, past or present? Fabulous. Rogus, underrated, LOL. I'm probably showing my age there with that pronunciation.
Rougeos. Oh, the Fabulous Rougeos. Yes, yes.
Do you guys have any favorite underrated theme music, past or present? Jimmy, I'll go to you first.
Oh my god, underrated?
Underrated, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Maybe go to Isa first because I'm trying to think of underrated music. I'm trying to think because there was a time where, when I was with the Ring Crew, we had the music and all the back in the day, all the cassettes with everybody's theme music in it and all that sort of stuff. I wonder if I have that down in the basement storage somewhere.
Oh my God, find it, Jimmy. Please.
Oh, I'm going to look now tomorrow, but give me a minute to think.
So I have 2 songs on my gym playlist that I absolutely love that I don't feel are talked about enough, and that's Jinder Mahal's entrance song. I will forever say it slaps, and Mark Henry's WWE theme from 3-6 Mafia. Come on, people don't talk about that song enough. Every time he came out, you get ready to kick somebody's ass. It's awesome.
Mark Henry's music was great. Yes,
yeah.
It was you know what? I love the Brood music because
forever.
Oh my goodness, they just. I don't know if you would consider it underrated, but it was again, when you talk about hitting somebody's music and right away you knew who it was almost like, well, not like Stone Cold's where you hear the glass shatter, but
right.
You know what I mean.
But I do miss that, Jimmy. I miss that in WWE. I was watching SmackDown a week or 2 ago, and I was like, I don't recognize half of the entrance music here. And that breaks my heart because I feel like we have such an emotional connection to entrance music. And that is something that AEW is doing right. There's especially going back to the Anarchy in the Arena match, Wild Thing playing in the background for the first 12 minutes of the match was so epic. I think that Tony Khan knows what he's doing when it comes to giving a certain signature entrance music to someone.
Yeah, I got a whole playlist that I go through. And I love CFOs too. Their era in NXT, they just produced hit after hit after hit. I very much miss them. A lot of people forget this Fire, CM Punk's theme before Cult of Personality. Feel like that goes under the radar because so many people love Cult of Personality just that much more. I loved Baron Corbin's theme, I'll Be Your End of Days and all that before he transitioned to the Happy Corbin stuff and all that. Obviously, Kingdom is not underrated. Everyone loves Kingdom. We Are One, the Nexus theme from back in the day. Very much enjoy that one. And I don't know if he still uses it because I think that there was a rights issue for a little bit. But Will Ospreay's theme, Elevated, I really, really enjoy that one. I don't think it's when I say underrated, it's probably very popular with the people who know it, but I don't know if everyone knows it. And he might have switched music because he was using that before he started the United Empire and everything. But either way, Elevated by a band called It Lives, It Breathes, Will Ospreay's theme, incredible.
Yeah.
Agreed. Great choices.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, hey, guys, that's AEW Dynamite. I know what we're all doing immediately after this podcast wraps. We're going to go watch MJF's promo 5 more times, hyper-analyze it, look for Easter eggs, see if we missed anything. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you both for joining me on this edition of the Wrestling Inc. podcast. Jimmy, people can find you at Jimmy Korderas. Very simple on your screen right there. But do you have anything else going on that you'd like to plug right now?
No, I do my daily ref and rants, which you can see on at Jimmy Korderas, and it's just little critiques here and there. I know some people take them a little bit too much to heart, but I'm trying to have a little fun with them. So you can see them at Jimmy Korderas on Twitter, at Real Jimmy Korderas on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook as well. And again, just having a little fun critiquing little things.
I love it. Isa, you can find her at NYC Demon Diva. That's D1VA. Isa, anything fun you got going on that you'd like to shout out?
Of course, my YouTube channel is on the way to 20,000 subscribers. So if people can just go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, I've been spending a lot of hours doing watch-alongs and just having some fun with everybody watching these shows live and just screaming out loud in your ears when MJF cut those kind of promos. So please go subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Yeah, cool. I love it. We'll make sure to all subscribe. Get you to that 20K. That's a huge milestone for me. Everywhere at Liam T. Crowley. Very simple. You can find my stuff on Wrestling Inc. as well as at Wrestling Inc. on TikTok. And make sure to just keep loving pro wrestling because I think we're in a golden age right now. And I'm very, very excited to see how things unfold. And really quick, if you want your own Pro Wrestling Tees Ref and Rant t-shirt, go to prowrestlingtees.com. There we go. The Jimmy Korderas. And there's also an extra one there that people don't know about. It's called the Canadian Heat Magnet.
Oh.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I might have to go do some shopping. That's
Me
my
too.
first priority before the MJF rewatch.
There you go.
Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.